2 shooting stars, you know, Ruined Orbs in there as well, and of course those Firebrands. So access to a lot of cards that can clean up, especially the early burst turns from the Druid, right? Those kind of pop-off turn 1s. I feel like this Mage does have the answer.
Yeah, and I think Firebrand is absolutely the big one out of those cards that you've mentioned because, you know, Token Druid still kind of thrives on the idea that they generate a board and then your opponent has to have the turn where they just fire spells at that board and they stay off board themselves, and then you just make another board, and then eventually they run out of ways to answer your stuff. But Firebrand actually being a tempo swing by actually putting a Spider Tank in play while clearing your opponent's board, I think is a huge thing for Casie to have access to, and thankfully for him, if you are a Casie fan, he has it here in his opening hand.
And even this as well is just a nice side effect of how the deck is built in this matchup. Like, if you go first, a lot of the time you get to play a minion,
yeah,
which is good, right? Like, this kills, you know, stuff already, which is huge. And again, we might see RDU play this a little bit slower, in that, you know, he might go for these more slower style of Token Druid and go big, hard to clear boards. But already he's facing down some threats.
It turns out that over 6+ years of playing Hearthstone, we have figured out playing minions is good. 2 into 2 for RDU off the Guess the Weight. That is just simply unfortunate. Takes an Arbor up, though, off the Guidance. Very nice.
You fight me.
Yeah, now really, Casie, of course, just developing this board even further and making RDU not want to into a Flame Waker that's already been played. But RDU, this is the tricky bit now, and I think you've just seen him go in focus mode, as this is a good hand, but how he chooses to play it just makes or breaks it, right? Because he needs to be able to use this Bloom, use maybe the Lunar Eclipse to secure a board that can maybe stick for just 1 turn.
So if he blooms Glowfly Swarm, that's what, 6 2/2s? Yeah, that's the play he's going to go for. So he would, like, 3 would die to Shooting Star, and then potentially up to 2 would die to the Firebrand if Shooting Star is in hand. But again, Shooting Star would need to be in hand for that to be the case.
Ooh. Choices. He's going to go for Ruined Orb first.
I like
guarantee
this.
Kills 1.
Yep.
Of course, it procs the Flame Waker as well. Hey, look, Sol, he can trade with the minions he already has on board.
Insane! I know. Imagine having minions.
And this is what I mean, right? Like, at this point, this is what you very quickly discover in this matchup, that you can deal with some threats from Druid and you gain the board, like you mentioned, right? It's not only dealing with the threats, Casey's a good control of the board right now.
Right.
How do you now overloaded? He does have this Lunar Eclipse to, like, kind of cheat some mana out here. It looks like he's going to keep it simple with Shapeshift.
Yeah, agree with this. He's able to clear up the only real minion he should care about, which is the 3/2 remainder of the Firebrand there, just by trading into it anyway, so I don't think there's any reason to use his 1 removal spell in his entire deck.
Surely this was a 1 golem. It was, and he got
it's a
1/1. Casie just knows. He just knows his stuff.
Yeah. Imagine paying more than 1 mana for a golem, Raven. Like, honestly. Well.
Don't we have any more words to add to that, Sol? Because that sums it up very nicely. Let's get something on the board, but when you're playing minions on board as Token Druid that you know are already dead,
he's just got 2 of them!
True mastery takes dedication.
Yeah, just a little bit insane, I'll say that.
Yeah. Barrel Rage allows him to deal 4 to the Raz. Like, can he really just try and generate a board into this without him clearing it up? Like,
yeah. I was wondering then whether he could have actually just, like, Solar and then Feral Rage.
Solar Feraled, yeah.
Either way, as you can probably tell from our comments, it's not looking good for RDU.
Not.
I think it's fair to say.
Ripping through these draws, though, but the problem is his deck just doesn't really contain an answer to a minion. It's a real problem that Druid has right now.
It's like, no, regardless of 1/1.
Yeah, no, regardless of what version of Druid you play, like your opponent plays a minion and you just suddenly go back to your collection and scroll through all of their cards and just realize that you have no way of interacting with that.
Frenzy with ping. It's just game. 100% win rate for that card now today. Absolutely insane. When is it going to start being included in people's decks? Casie takes game number 1 with the Mage, and already, you know, obviously I think he hit arguably one of the best matchups, if not the best matchup for that Mage. I think that is very consistently how it goes. Maybe not that crazy, but still the end result is often the same. So great start there for Casie, proving that, you know, there is something to this Mage list that kind of, for me at least, Sottle came out of nowhere. I think I saw it as submissions hit and was like,
yeah,
what
same.
is this?
Yeah, absolutely agree. I do think it's unusual. I do think, like you say, it's a very good matchup. Obviously, Casie got the absolute nuts minion curve there.
Right.
But if he didn't get the nuts minion curve, then suddenly instead you're drawing like shooting stars or your cheap things to activate your firebrand, devolving missiles, and you're just staying in the game longevity-wise and taking over a bit later. I think the more interesting thing to see is like see what happens when Druid actually hits the nuts in that matchup as well, and you can actually like clash power versus power, because I think it's fair to say that RDU had a fairly poor draw there. Like he had early-ish Glowfly, but there was no Gibbling start, there was no Gibbling refill because he burned the Gibbling, and by the time he had, got into like Arbor upturns, he had nothing on board and nothing to play, right? So whether that's a symptom of the deck or whether that's just a bad draw for RDU, I'm sure he'll think it's the latter because he's just so used to drawing Gibbling on 1, as we've discussed already, that he'll think his deck is broken when that doesn't happen. But we are going to be seeing now Casie go over to the Token Druid and perhaps see the roles reversed now.
Maybe not Sottle, because Casey's getting the good end of the stick here, because this of course is Token Druid, very similar to all the lists we've seen and we see on stream most days, but I believe RDU is locking in his Warlock for this game, Sottle, which means another, I would say, quite unfortunate matchup hit there for RDU. So maybe this is just going to be one of those series already where if Casie only has his Warlock left to take a win with, you just naturally got to feel good to go 1 out of 3, right?
It certainly seems that way, yeah. Casey's list is interesting, though, and it only plays 1 Soul of the Forest, which I do think is a particularly powerful card against Warlock, right? Like that first time that you land a board and it doesn't get full cleared and you're able to land that Soul of the Forest, that's when you have School Spirits protection, that's when you have Twisting Nether protection, that's when you have Cascading Disaster protection, when you actually are able to get those Death Rattles to come down. And then suddenly it needs to be combinations of those cards from the Warlock coming out to be able to clear your board. So Casie only playing 1 might be to his detriment in this matchup, but we will wait and see.
Yeah, and just glancing over Casey's list, I guess question cards is 1 guidance and running the double guess the weight. I think those slots are the ones that get messed around with. Again, as you mentioned, whether it's Soul of the Forest, extra 1 in there, double guidance, or the pouch or anything like that. So those little choices in Token Druid do actually interest me. But RDU's Warlock list, arguably outside of the Ooze, again looks just very, very standard.
Raven, imagine not playing 1 mana Zephyrus in your Druid deck. Come on,
I'm with you
all the way.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Based on our sample
crazy
size
thoughts.
of 1 good outcome with an owl, we are now the world's biggest fans of resizing pouch. But yeah, Casie, I mean, it always kind of felt like the series was going to end up this way, one or the other, right? Like someone was going to blow someone out 3-0 and then just have the ability to just pop off super hard on Twitter. It just felt like what was in the stars for the way this is going to go. So we'll have to see if that now comes to fruition with Casie hitting another good matchup for himself.
Well, let's see how it goes. And I want you to break down what Warlock wants in the early game, Sottle, because we saw some good removal there that RDU just threw away. Why is that? What is RDU actually digging for?
So, honestly, for me, I think similar to what we saw from the Mage, right? He wants to play a minion curve. I think that's the most powerful thing that you can generally do as the Warlock. You have 4 1/3s to mulligan for to play on turn 1, and then if you can do that into Spider Tank with the Lucky Soul Hoarder, then you're in a very similar position to what you saw from that Mage game, right? Where you're ahead on board, and then if they develop into it, boom, School Spirits, boom, double Drain Soul or whatever, just to clear some stuff up, and you still have minions and you're still pushing damage damage. I think that is the best spot you can generally be in as the Warlock.
Okay, well, Vardy, you kind of got that with the Swampoos and now, of course, the Lucky Do in his hand. And Casie, although does have Innovate, Glowfly, and then Arbor up as well. So he does have some way to build that board. But as you said, this is as, you know, maybe without obviously the one drop, as good as RDU was going to get here. Oh, and there's Soul as well.
Is he souling this? Okay, I didn't actually spot this play. I was kind of trying to decide between like a Gibbling Turn and the Vate Glowfly Swarm. I didn't spot how good the Gibbling Turn actually was with the Soul of the Forest. This is very, very nice.
Yeah, especially going into Arbor Up, right? So if what, like, two of these minions live, Arbor Up feels very strong.
Right. Obviously, if he went Vate Glowfly, he's kind of conceding the game on the spot to School Spirits. You can kind of choose to make that bet, right? So what's the percentage of my opponent having School Spirits here? I'll just bet the game on that outcome. But instead, I think he found a more powerful line that plays around that eventuality.
And I do think without a Fungal Fortunes or anything in hand, Casie can't wait. He's losing board. Time's ticking on, and the second RDU starts, you know, dropping Ogremancer into an empty Druid board, you're going to feel pretty bad about life.
Yep. It's also worth noting that, you know, RDU did draw a decent minion curve at the start of the game, but the 699 in his hand outside of that is not the ideal draw that Warlock would have wanted to see this game. Ooh.
Oh, see, well, now there's next question, right? Is that ever better because of Adorable Infestation?
You go Adorable, Pride's Fury, clean trade through. Yeah, I really like it.
Okay. So again, it's tricky, right? Because although this is more health, it's more health on less minions than Arbor Up. But again, it sets up Arbor Up as more of like a kind of burst damage push.
Ugh. Ugh. Help, Raven. I feel personally attacked by this Warlock hand.
Very reminiscent of Bunny Hoppers from yesterday, actually.
Kind of is, yeah.
Just all the end game and just not enough to get there.
Yeah.
RDU, of course, just doing what he can do, taking basically one minion off the board.
There's the Fungal, but Casie is going to push this turn, I'm sure, with the Arbor Up. Yep, plays out the minion, Arbor Up, smashes face with everything he has, and he has an extremely secure board state here. He's very resilient to School Spirits, way too early for Twisting Nether, extremely resilient to Cascading Disaster, and that would not have been corrupted yet anyway. He's in a very, very good spot. I guess it would have been corrupted once by the Talon, but obviously that is still way short of having an impact on this board.
Yeah, I mean, outside of this tap, yeah, that's just going to be game. I think that's game, that's series, because that's just lethal on board, and you can't clear any of the minions. Wow, just like that, Subtle, going up to a 2-0 victory for Casie. And although that was an extreme example, of course, Casie looks ecstatic at his victory here. But just like that, although it was an extreme example of the matchup, again, not helped by RDU's extremely late game hand past the first few turns, that's kind of the expected outcome based on those win rates. I mean, we talked yesterday about Language Hacker practiced this exact matchup for many games back-to-back on stream the other day, and I think he ended around 30%, which is not a percentage you are very happy with if you're the Warlock.
Yeah, for sure. You see RDU just kind of pained, and rightly so. He just really didn't have any options. Even the choice to coin Talon just to try and fight back, like, is one of the few really impactful decisions he got to make that game. And it was a tough one to make just because throwing away the coin with a hand that was that greedy was obviously going to slow him down significantly. But I don't think even holding onto the coin, if he hadn't have played like the 3/3 Divine Shield that turn, I don't think he would have lived long enough to really get to any of like corrupting strongmen business anyway. So it seemed like a reasonable decision from where I was sat.
Well, I think the bigger one was actually if he coined Talon and got to 7, which he kind of did, if he got Militia and not the other strongman drawn, right?
True.
Then maybe there's something that could have happened. But yeah, it was not looking great. And we are going to switch over. Of course, Casie has his Warlock left to win with, but this new age take on the Warlock, and this is very much a Warlock that is built for this week of GM, right? Of the
Yes.
expectation of aggro lineups to kind of punish what's expected of, say, Priest, for example. And this Warlock is one that can fight back with the help of those Void Drinkers as, I guess, the main standout in this list.
And I've talked before that, Casie is, in my opinion, you have to separate the idea of like a deck builder from a lineup builder. I don't think Casie is necessarily like a top tier deck builder in terms of just pulling archetypes out of nowhere and suddenly they're all over ladder and they're the top deck on HS Replay or anything like that. But in terms of building lineups, like using all available data and bringing that together into building a lineup that can win a tournament, I think Casie is one of the best players in the world at doing that. And I've talked about how he shows up for practice sessions with multiple different complete lineups built. So like 4 different sets of 4 decks, and is saying to everyone else in the group, okay, so if people are going to play like Token Druid and Weapon Rogue, then we should play this lineup, and here's why. If they're going to go more control heavy, then we should play this lineup, and here's why. And sometimes there's like shared classes between those decks, between those lineups, but it's just different tech cards in the decks that are changing some of the matchups, and that's where having just an Earth Elemental that doesn't overload you in your deck is suddenly just a huge asset to you if you're expecting people to bring a bunch of stuff like Token Druid to the tournament.
Yeah, really, really strong, and not something that the players who weren't aware of this list would expect, right? You're not used to trying to take down a super high health minion on 5 against Warlock. That's not something you expect to happen and expect to be able to deal with. So diving in right now, though, Casie, off to again, that start you kind of mentioned, right? The minion focus in this matchup with the double 1-drop and a Lucky Soul Hoarder in there. So looking quite good for Casie as well. Oh, even better now. Because especially now, it means he'll have plenty of soul fragments in there to not worry about this soul drinker not being active.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of 1/3s in play. This is a very common Gibbling turn for the opponent. And RDU is going to go for the Brian Gibbler here. A little bit upset. I would imagine that he whiffed on the Soul of the Forest on the draw on the previous turn, but he does get that Soul of the Forest anyway.
Yeah, it definitely feels bad, right, to play this into 1/3s. Definitely not what RDU's after, but it's just that approach where he has to do something, right, and he does get that Arbor up. And now, Hysteria might have to do some work, even though that work is probably minimal at this point. Oh, okay.
Soul Shear off the top, okay.
And Drain
something.
Soul.
Yeah, Drain Soul, Soul Shear can clean up some. Could also just choose to trade one and then just try and Hysteria a 4/3 and get some juice out of it, but it's so unlikely to do anything effective, right? It's going to trade into 1 minion. Yeah, seems like this is a more powerful way to go about it. This is now theoretically a weak turn for RDU. And Casey's going to curve into the Void Drinker. RDU has probably the best possible card to be able to fill this gap.
Yeah, I guess the best possible card in general would have just been... Wait, let me just check. Yeah. Yeah, purely because it's not only Void... We can see Void Drinker, but what if there's just Skull Spirits off the top, right?
Well, there is. So there isn't, though. That's the thing. If there was Skull Spirits, it was being played last turn 100% of the time. I think that's something that RDU will be very, very comfortable with in that spot, that there is no Skull Spirits in hand.
Oh, sure. I just mean more the feeling of, like, Power of the Wild would stop the top deck and still be good against Void Drinker, right?
Yep. Yep.
But Casie does have that Void Drinker, so even if this just buys him some time, it's going to help a lot. But it is a little bit frustrating to play into and not being able to clear any minions with the rest of his turn.
Right.
Ooh.
Guidance fills the mana perfectly here. Imagine just... he's overloads take both. Okay.
I guess the thought pattern here is, why not take more cards when there's no 6-drop to play next turn, right? If you look at his hand, what does he need that 1 extra mana for?
Well, my thinking is, because Guess the Weight was one of the options, and the option that I would have taken if I had to just take one, you don't really know how much mana you want to spend on the following turn, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, Tamsin pickup for Casie, but nothing super powerful to pair with it right now. But it gives him a window, gives him a hope, right?
Yeah. There's even, you know, it does go with Hysteria, and again, I know Hysteria is not great versus Druid, but it kills things. It does something, right?
Yep.
And like being able to like times in Hysteria is still pretty reasonable, especially on the board looking like this from RDU.
I think RDU briefly considered whether he wanted to solar his Guess the Weight there, but he's just going to go with it. Pretty easy Moore decision. He does hit on it this time. He has been missing on those so far this series. Oh, insta both on that one. Yeah, that is the absolute nuts.
More or less, though. More or less. It's got to be last one.
Less.
Yeah.
Yep.
You win!
What was the game show we used to have in the UK? It was literally just like Bruce Forsyth turning over cards as to whether they were higher or lower than the next one. You're probably too young to remember it. Exposing how much of a boomer I am right now.
No, I definitely watched that. I just can't remember the name because all I remember is higher or lower.
Yeah.
That show,
just the whole audience going higher, lower. Yeah.
May as well call it higher or lower.
Maybe it was really dumb, huh? It was
yeah.
The simplest concepts people would watch. Incredible. Here we are now watching a children's card game.
I was going to say.
Vastly superior.
Hey, though, Casie has managed to at least not be facing down lethal this turn for now. But of course, RDU has something to say about that and he's going to be able to refill this board nicely. RDU is just missing some of that burst damage, right? Power of the Wild's not bad by any means, but there's no just real push with what's really just Arbor up nowadays with Savage Roar gone.
Right. Soulshare again, but it's just these little individual spot removal cards. It's just been this. It's just been the big miss for Casie. No, not that one.
Has it? Is this the card that was going to save Casie Soul?
He's just really, really needed those lucky soul hoarders this game.
Just wants to hear my lucky dues.
Yeah. It was the school spirits that he has been looking for this game to really make anything happen, because spot removal is great and he's even had the TAMs in to go with them, but without the AoE he just hasn't been able to ever full clear a board. And sometimes that's the play pattern that you need to find against Druid, is you full clear a board and then they have a card draw hand, right? They have a refill hand. They don't have that instant just board in a can, slam onto the board, make a board again. They have to like Guess the Weight, they have to Fungal Fortunes. And then because you full cleared their board on the previous turn, you can use that one turn window to develop some tempo yourself and take control of the game. But Casey's never been able to find that window because he's never been able to really get the full clear going.
Yeah, now the bad news, probably just the exact board you don't want to look at as Warlock. Casie just not hitting those school spirits. All those lucky soul hoarders, right, Sol?
Best card in the matchup, I swear. That's why we highlighted it. Yep.
Does get a strongman, so at least there's like something he can play this turn. He can go for Draxus, gain 5 armor, play the strongman.
He does then have Yasharaj with a corrupted strongman potentially. He will also be corrupting his Cascading Disaster, which will get that in the pool for the Yasharaj as well if he can live that long. But if he can live that long is a pretty serious question right now.
So 21 health here for Casie, +1, so +7 to the board right now just with Power of the Wild. More now with Fury.
Should be lethal. Solar Power should get through this, I believe. Solar Pride Bloom Power is the same amount of power.
It's the same amount of damage, yeah.
Yep, should get there. I believe this is now like 35 in total, and it's 21 plus 6 with the taunt, and the taunt gets value traded perfectly, so it should be easy lethal without counting.
I was just going to say, if you don't want to count, if the taunt can just soak 1 minion, then yes, it's probably lethal if there's one clean trade going in there. So RDU does take a game, and it's the chair that is going to receive the victory in replace for RDU, as I imagine he's going to just fill up his drink or something. But yeah, good job for RDU there, but again, I think Casie won't be too upset or affected by by that loss. It was a matchup that I guess like actually with a School Spirits in there somewhere could have been winnable, that specific game, but it's a matchup you don't go into it expecting to take it. You are not feeling favoured in that one.
Yeah, because he had a very good start with double 1-3s, so he got through the initial gibbling start and just didn't lose the game immediately, right? So I think from that point, if he'd started to get into School Spirits, especially after having found Tamsin, because that is just straight up game winning a lot of the time. It's one of the few like ways out of the matchup for free almost for Warlock if you get that Tamsin School Spirits interaction going on. But without finding that, look, it's a really important card in the matchup. Okay,
Glad that made the
tank. But yeah, we saw in the end it just wasn't nearly enough, especially with RDU discovering more copies of Soul of the Forest in the end as well, just to make his board ultimately way too resilient and stack up all that damage at the end.
Yep, and that does mean that RDU is going to have his Warlock and his Rogue left over. He is going to step over to his Rogue for the next matchup, leaving the more or less mirror match till last. I do wonder how that mirror match actually ends up going, because although you could say the extra demons are defenses against aggro, they're still pretty big minions to just play down, right? So, you know, we'll maybe see that if it happens, but for now, RDU going to be on this Rogue once again, and like I'm pretty happy to join you, Sotta, in saying this feels like the standard Rogue list at the moment.
Yeah, very much looks that way. We see two Guardian Orc Merchants in the spot where the Penflingers were previously in Tice series, which, as I said, is kind of a natural evolution. But I think most people day one were of the opinion that Penflinger was still going to be good in this deck, so not going to fault anyone with the limited time that Europe had as putting them in the deck.
Yeah, one nice interesting point here is this list is 29 card match with Casie's, and it's just 1/1 maker in RDU's versus the Vanessa Van Cleef in Casie's. And that honestly is very interesting, because when you look at it like that to compare just those two exact cards, you're like, you know what? Yeah, I can see Vanessa Van Cleef being just a good card if one maker fits, because it can, you know what you're going to get, and also it's just a stronger card, right? It's a 2/3, not a 2/2. So just a very interesting observation there, and just noticed when looking at the two deck lists next to each other.
Yeah, having a Vanessa in your deck also makes your opponent have to think more, and no one ever wants to do that.
Oh,
right? Like
that would beat me.
If they have a whole other thing that they have to think about. Yeah, we actually discovered that the best way for Raven to play Hearthstone is not think at all and
that is just
completely
proven.
Focus on something else. Yeah,
yep,
it's just objectively true at this point.
So you'll see me top 10 legend tomorrow.
Yep.
But yeah, moving quickly on there. Casie, of course, on his Warlock, getting off to an okay start with that Spirit Jailer, but again, it's kind of awkward what you're looking for against Rogue, because I do feel like it really just depends what the Rogue's game plan is in any given game, right? It depends on their opening.
Oh, Foxy Swindle draws the Octobot. Hard to imagine a much stronger start for this Rogue deck than this. On top of which, obviously Tenwu Alex is not something you want in your opening hand. If you're going to discount your entire hand against specifically Warlock, though, it might be something you're interested in.
Not going to be too upset, especially when one of the other cards, well, you've already got a Shadow Step, which is insane as well, and one of the other cards you've got is Secret Passage, right? So you can say, oh, because my hand sucks right now, I can actually just do this another way. And is this going to be a cheeky Tenwu play here? It looked like he hovered it for a second.
It did.
I don't think it works, though, right? It doesn't do anything.
It doesn't work. You're just not allowed to do it. It's illegal.
I appear in the game and say, no, this is bad. So yeah, I do like the hold there, but it is just considering, I think, just options of where to put Shadow Steps and Tenwus right now.
Right.
I think a play I've seen recently that I do really like is when you have this kind of hand, actually just playing Alexstrasza as soon as you can, and then Shadow Stepping it, and then doing a Tenwu turn, because you deal the 8 damage for free to an extent, and not have to worry about doing weird things to your hand to squeeze it all into one turn.
And honestly, I'm really just trying to evaluate Void Drinker in various matchups, just because it is the new card and kind of the focal point of this deck that Casie has. it's kind of great here too, right? Like, Rogue isn't like a classical aggro deck where just having a 7/8 taunt is a big deal, but having a 7/8 is a big deal, right? Because this is what Rogue wants to do, is just mess around, draw cards, get the whole way through their deck, build up a massive damage in their hand, and then throw it all at your face. You can interrupt them being able to do that quite effectively by just sticking a 7/8 on the board. And I think, honestly, RDU recognized that dynamic as well, which is why he's just left a floating field contact on the board that he got very little value out of, because he understands that, you know, Casie just wants to develop a minion on this turn because it's his 5-mana turn.
Yeah, and also, we're going to quickly just step across to what could be the mirror soon. The one deck plays a 7/8 into the other deck playing a 3/8 on the same turn. So, you know, even that could be very powerful with it going up against Ogremancer later on. So,
wait, does RDU's Warlock have Mazaki in it, Raven, somehow?
Did I say a 3/8?
You did say a 3/8.
Oh, I meant a 3/7.
I know you did, Raven. But I took the opportunity to make you sound stupid. You see? See how it works?
Remember that.
It's good. Yeah.
Now though, 0 mana Tenwu, 7 mana Alex, and a Shadow Step is when things start getting very interesting with these potential combos.
Also, just deck in his hand at this point. Field contact was played and then stuck, so he just got a full turn to pop off with that thing.
I think this is one of the arguments for Alex and Tenwu, is that, like I kind of mentioned at the start of the day, is the Rogue deck has so much card draw that even if you have them earlier than you want, you can normally get to at least a decent rate. Obviously, this was insane for RDU, but even half of this is still good enough.
I think one minion always lived there no matter what happened. I think the best outcome was that he also bumped the Divine Shield before he died. I think that's the best thing he could have possibly hoped for in that spot.
Yeah, so now I actually really like Alex, right? Because it works. He can Alex now, Shadow Step, he goes back to 7, then he can Alex Tenwu, and then Alex again next turn. Is that not insane?
It does seem pretty strong, yeah.
Because what heal can happen in that amount of time, right? In one turn's time. Like, is that really going to heal back up to, like, what you'd go down to 10? And he can deal 16, so Casie would need to heal for a minimum of 6. I guess more with the Octobot poke. Right.
Yeah, I mean, with the Octobot coming in as well. But I think, you know, you can look at that the other way around, right? And say that if RDU spends this turn, like, playing minions and building up more burn in his hand, potentially, then, you know, those minions are still representing damage, right? That have to be removed. He's still presenting problems for Casie to deal with, and he still has all that damage. Like, he hasn't spent any of the cards that make that damage happen over the course of the game. It's all still there.
Yeah, I think I was just thinking of, like, trying to avoid targets for Drained Soul and things like that, and, like, just to, because that's one way, right? If he had Tamsin Drained Soul on 2 minions, well, suddenly it's got way more health again, but that does look like plenty of damage there with the Alex Tenwu combo, and a bit of a laugh from Casie, just knowing that, yep, that is going to be the game. And again, just another sort of bonus, I guess, or 1 point for the team Alex Tenwu Rogue players out there, and this series going to that Warlock mirror match settle.
Yeah, I think Casie might have just been chuckling at the irony there that appears to be a point of contention between the two of them as well, based on the tweet that Casie sent out of RDU not really understanding the power of Alexstrasza. So the fact that RDU then ends up using the Alexstrasza, which I'm assuming Casie has told him is mandatory to be in his deck, is what ends up killing him at that point. But yeah, the series all the way back to 2-2 now, and I believe, if I'm keeping track of things correctly, we are now down to the Warlock mirror, Raven.
Yes, and like I said, I think, much like yourself, I'm very interested to see how mainly this Void Drinker performs as less of an anti-aggro tool and more of just a big minion for Warlock, for their opponent to try and deal with, and then that might help. It might not do anything, there might just be a cascading that just bats it away and it's no real problem, but it just, you know, stops the on-curve normal plays from their opponent, right? If that Casie, for example, can get one down first.
Yeah, but it is going to be probably the first time that we see actually, the namesake of this deck. A lot of people will just refer to it as Ticketus Warlock or TikTok Warlock if you're so inclined, where this might be the first time we actually see it come into play, because generally I think throughout GM we've generally been seeing Warlock go up against aggro matchups, right, where it's just not really a factor. It's just about survival and drawing the removal and soul fragments and trying to counter swing, and with Sociologist Militia the game doesn't really go on much longer than that. But now this is the kind of matchup, the mirror match, where that Ticketus is very much designed to be powerful, and you see RDU hanging onto it in the opening hand, and Casie responding like for like on the other side, picking it up far left in his mulligan.
Yeah, everything seems fair so far, and I think both players, at least in my experience, should be focusing on live tapping as often as possible. Outside of the Ticketus, I actually think second best card is Draxus. If one player lands Draxus earlier or significantly earlier than the other, I think it's just too much power to just catch up on most of the time. There just isn't the removal there, which is a lot to say in Warlock, to actually deal with the 6/6 for 2 mana every single turn.
100% agree. Yeah. If anything, I might even rank it above Ticketus in terms of levels of importance.
Sure.
But because maybe not in terms of mulligan keeps, because it costs 9 as opposed to 6, right? And it's just a much later game card. But I do think in terms of overall importance, if you just get your Jiraxis down, I mean, they can burn all the cards in the deck they want. You just have a 6/6 every turn,
That's it. And you say about the mulligan, you can see now both players are just spamming live tap quite quickly, because that's what you want to do. And hey, they can't burn your Draxus if it's in your hand, so also maybe you do keep it in your mulligan.
Exactly.
Who knows? And this ooze actually is another point, right? Because Casie is not running an ooze, and RDU is, so again, removing that huge durability weapon from Draxus could be a factor as well.
Boom! 7/8. One soul fragment left in the deck. I'm sure Casie was dreading his draw on that turn, but he did survive.
I thought you were going to say 25 of stats when you said boom there, and I was like, oh, I've not heard that for too long.
Boom, 15 of stats.
Yeah. Look like Drain Soul going to be used here.
Yep, setting up for the School Spirits now on the following turn, just sacrificing 7 damage for himself here. So this is just tempo here for Casie. I may have oversold how late this matchup is going to go here, because the extra tempo being provided by these 7/8s are turning out to be pretty huge here. That is a ton of damage coming through already.
I believe as well this Tailing will draw Alex Straza, because the Astrage is already in hand. So again, more burst damage for Casie once he gets there.
Mm-hmm.
Not you.
And the Ogremancer follow-up.
This is a fully stacked Sociologist here on the side for RDU.
Can I get a Soul Fragment check, Sol?
There was 8 in RDU's deck. Whereas I believe Casie is still down to 1. No, I think 0, actually. I think he's only played 1 card, and then he's drawn 1 and burned 1 with the Soul Drinker.
So many possibilities.
How do you now thinking, is it worth triple trading, or should he pass and have a huge board to actually catch up on this damage differential here?
Good question. I mean, we can see there is literally double School Spirits in Casey's hand. It's a pretty big punish for that happening.
It's really tough, right? Because it depends how you look at it, because also for RDU, is the Ogre a threat? Does it matter?
It's certainly more of a threat when he's at 16 than it would have been before he got hit in the face by a 7/8. Cascading is fully corrupted in Casey's hand as well, having been corrupted by both of the 5-drops he played, Ogremancer and the Void Drinker. So you can choose to go for that here instead of the School Spirits line, which I do like.
Yeah, another side benefit of more 5-drops is that you are corrupting some of those key removal tools much earlier and more consistently.
Tempo Strongman, just to get the corrupt done, maybe? No, it's going to tap.
I was just thinking, this is the point. Oh, I was going to make this joke, RDU! Damn, I should have said it! I thought he was just going to go for the... I actually didn't realise that was corrupted. I thought he was just going to go for the tempo one and just burn his own cards to try and catch up the damage.
No, because he played Sociologist on the last turn, right? But now Casie has Nether into Strongman. He has his own Ticketus, which has now been corrupted by that Twisting Nether, so he can counterpunch on the following turn, and he has his Yashiraj. But RDU has all of that stuff as well, and he's on the play here, so he's the one who's getting to do all of these powerful things first at this point.
Yeah. It's still close because the Alex certainly makes up some of that being behind gap, I guess, because just having to having the ability to just deal 8 whenever is actually very, very strong when their opponent's low-ish.
It's true. While you were being excited about what you erroneously for a while thought was a tempo Ticketus, we did gloss over the fact that Jiraxxus was one of the burns from the Ticketus being played from RDU, which is a huge factor in his favour now as well if the game does reset and go long. Those were less impressive, it has to be said.
Yeah, definitely. I think RDU got away with that one. Whenever a Soul Fragment is burned, even if it's just one, you take that as a victory, right? Because you've effectively just gained a card in your deck that shouldn't be there. Yeah, tailing, cascading, go. Seems good to me.
Does indeed. So he gets back Cascading, he's already used, he gets back Ticketus, of course. Gets the Strongman as well and the Lucky Soul.
Also, RDU only plays one Twisting Nether, so Casie knows he can't be Twisting Nether back again. And I think this is just everything from Casie, right? Chuck everything on the board, hope something can hit, and then Alex to finish I think is the clear plan here.
Looking that way. 11 cards remaining in deck for RDU, but 6 of them are Soul Fragments at this point, so he is very, very limited on what his options are. Down to 10 now with the Alexstrasza draw, and yeah, you can say he's been fairly unlucky there. That I believe he went through 2 Ticketus turns with 8 Soul Fragments in his deck, and he only got 2 Soul Fragments burned total. So he did actually lose an awful lot of actual value from his deck there.
Yeah, this board, weirdly enough, is Hysteria-proof because all the minions are so big, but still, RDU actually got rid of a good chunk of the damage there.
Yeah, and this is very nicely done as well. He plays the additional minion here, and he now has the opportunity, if he wants, to get a full board clear with the Hysteria, because he has his extra 3/4 in play.
And I think this is slipping away from Casie. RDU
looking that way.
All the way back up now with the 1 billion Soul Fragments. And of course, this means he's going to hit Fatigue much faster, but I don't think it matters because what does Casie even have left?
He has very little left, and I'm not even going to have the opportunity to show you, Raven, because he's already thrown it in. But I think the big kicker there overall is that despite all of those burns, hitting actual cards and not Soul Fragments for RDU, the Jiraxxus was still remaining. So even if that game stalemated, even if RDU then played his own Yashiraj, played out his Strongmen and second Ticketus and Lucky Souls and everything else that he had from hand, even if Casie then found the same creative Hysteria or whatever clear to be able to answer that board state, one player has a Jiraxxus and the other doesn't, and they're both out of cards at that point. So it's fairly easy to resolve where that one is going to go, and I think Casie realised that as quickly as anyone else. And from 2-0 up, the reverse sweep comes out on Casie's Control Warlock, sending RDU all the way through to Sunday.
Yeah, look, very, very close indeed. But I think once again, Militia just has a lot to say about these games. It's like, it feels like that might be one of the best cards in the deck right now in like all matchups, because it seems to be the card that is pulling some players out of some trouble here. But yeah, of course, RDU clearing up this board, and then most importantly, as you pointed out, just not having access to Jiraxxus versus Casie not. And unfortunately, it is the way that it goes when players play